Good evening and welcome to the Olympia City Council's 4th Town Hall meeting. My name's Clark Gilman. I chair the Land Use and Environment Committee and I'm a City Council member. This is the 4th and final produced in response to the COVID pandemic and sponsored by the Olympia City Council. Tonight's Town Hall topic is rental housing and mortgage relief and resources. I want to allow each of my council colleagues to introduce themselves. Would you like to say hello?
Hi, I'm Danny Madrone, new member of the Olympia City Council and a member of the Land Use and Environment Committee.
Hi, I'm Jessica Bateman, Mayor Pro Tem for the city and also on the Land Use and Environment Committee.
All right, and we have about 75 members of the public logged in and watching via Zoom with us. The virtual town hall series were planned to inform the community about the resources and assistance available to those impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Tonight, we've got a panel who can talk to us about housing issues, and we're going to have Jay Burney, interim city manager, serve as our moderator. There he is. And our panelists include Carrie Retland, who is Olympia's home fund manager, and our guests, Jennifer Arnold, Vice President and Residential Lending Manager of Olympia Federal Savings, Kirsten York, Director of Family Services at the Community Action Council of Lewis, Mason, and Thurston counties, and Craig Chance, who is Executive Director of the Housing Authority of Thurston County. So at this point, I'm going to turn the show over to City Manager Jay Burney.
Thank you, Chair Gilman. Just want to welcome everybody once again. So in terms of how this will flow tonight, the panelists will have about 15 minutes worth of presentations for you. At that point in time, we'll turn it over to the Q&A. For those of you, just to orient you, those of you who are online, at the bottom of your screen, you should see a tab that says Q&A. If you click on that, you'll have the ability to input a question. And so the way this will work as we go along, you can start typing your questions at any time. And when we get to the question and answer portion of the segment, I will pull questions off that list and I'll serve them up to the panel and have them answer them. We'd ask that, you know, if you look at the questions already there to see if it might already be answered or already be up there before you put it up there. We're asking for folks to be polite as they enter their questions and to give us much clarity and help me as the moderator figure out what your question is. And then I'll do my best to summarize and look for light questions. So and we'll have about 20 minutes at the end of the presentation set aside for those questions and answers before we summarize. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Retland and off we go.
Thank you very much, Jay. I am going to get my slides up for everyone. I am going to give you all an overview of some renter protections and mortgage holder protections that have happened in the last couple of months and years leading up to COVID, and then more recently, both state and federal response related to COVID-19. There are a number of renter protections that have taken place in the last 10 years all over the state of Washington, from installment payments for move-in fees and deposits to penalties for specific things related to landlords, relocation assistance in Tacoma, and then more recently, this group, the City of Olympia's Land Use and Environment Committee, is planning on taking up just cause for evictions and some other issues next month here in the City of Olympia. Over the last few months, a number of bills passed last session and have gone into effect. House Bill 1694 recently passed, and it requires landlords to allow installment payments for deposits, last month's rent and non-refundable fees. So now tenants will have a period of time where they'll be allowed to make payments on first, last deposit and other fees. Senate Bill 3378 makes improvements to a another reform bill from last year and adds more notice for tenants for resources related to their eviction process. House Bill 2535 provides a grace period related to late fees. It also allows more flexibility for people who have a fixed income, like Social Security, to allow them to request a due date for their rent that's linked to when their income arrives. And then during the last session, the state also passed a number of COVID-19 supports. Probably the most relevant for this conversation today. So a number of those were funding. Some of that funding has already started to flow through the State Department of Commerce, through the county, and into the city. And the governor also has passed 2 moratoriums on evictions. The most recent was extended to June 4th, and that moratorium has broadened to provide more information, more flexibility for households that are struggling to pay their rent because of underemployment or unemployment or other financial impacts related to COVID-19. There's a rumor around that you cannot be evicted right now, and that's not accurate. There are still reasons why an eviction can be served against you for other violations of your rental agreement that are not related to non-payment of rent or to ensure health and safety of others around you, other tenants in a building, for example. The federal government has also taken a number of actions to support households that are challenged to pay rent because of COVID-19 through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, the CARES Act. A primary one is that if a landlord has a federally backed mortgage or multifamily mortgage, you cannot be evicted for non-payment of rent for at least, for 120 days that began on March 27, which was when the CARES Act was passed. And then after the 120-day period is up, the landlord cannot require the tenant to vacate until providing a 30-day notice, which is required in our state's Landlord-Tenant Act. Other COVID-19 supports for homeowners specifically under the CARES Act is a right to forbearance, which allows for a pause or a reduction on your mortgage payments. Primarily, this applies to households who have mortgages that are federally backed. For homeowners who don't have a federally backed loan and need that forbearance, there is encouragement and direction in the CARES Act currently, but since the federal government has less jurisdiction over those mortgages, they had less options to provide. And Jennifer, that's something that I may need your help with to explain in more detail later on, if you have that information. And now I'm going to turn it over to you, Jennifer, to talk a little bit about what Ole Fed has been up to in relation to coronavirus relief.
Well, thank you for the invitation what we're doing to help our customers. If you probably want to just move on to the next slide. So this is just a little bit about Olympia Federal. We are a mutual institution, which means that we're accountable to our depositors and our loan customers and not shareholders. We've been in the Olympia area for 114 years and consistently received a 5-star rating from Bauer Financial, which only 1% of the nation's banks have received that. So we're pretty proud of that. And next slide. So what we've done to help our mortgage loan customers, and we do not have federally backed loans, we're entirely portfolio lending, which means we keep our loans on our books and they're not federally backed, but we have always taken the stance to do what's right for our customers. And so when COVID-19 started happening and we were faced with the knowledge that we may have customers that will experience financial loss, we came up with some ways that we were able to help our customers. So of course, we're waiving late fees for customers. And forbearance is kind of a new word for everybody, I think, but what that really means is just kind of putting your payments on pause for a little bit. And there's lots of different ways that you can handle a forbearance. And we've heard a lot over the last several days of many lenders are kind of treating it like a balloon payment at the end, where you would maybe not have to make your payments for 3 to 6 months, but immediately at the end of that, you would have to make the full all the payments that you missed, and people are out of work, so that's going to be difficult to do. So what we've done is deferred payments. We're allowing customers to modify the terms of their loan by tacking on those payments to the end of the loan. So instead of a 30-year mortgage, you might have a 30-year and 3-month mortgage. We're also helping our customers that are doing construction loans right now, because there's been a little bit of a pause on that, and we're offering extensions to them so that they can continue to build their home even after the initial construction loan phase would technically be over. And we're also not reporting negatively to credit bureaus at this point in time. So we have been able to help 100% of the customers that called us to tell us that they have suffered financial hardship and needed assistance. And what that has amounted to is 80 mortgage loans to date that we've been able to help with different modification and forbearance agreements. We've worked with every customer individually to find the best solution for them. Some of the customers are landlords that might have some of their tenants that aren't able to pay rent, and so they've also suffered a loss. And we have also had a lot of customers that just said, I'm not in a position right now that I am not able to make my mortgage payments, but if I get there, what can you do for us? So lots of curiosity. And then if you want to move on to the next slide, we also have put in some things to help our deposit customers by waiving overdraft fees, allowing them to withdraw money from certificates of deposits without charging a penalty, waiving person-to-person payment fees, and fees to transfer money between financial institutions. In addition, we have in round 1 of the CARES Act, we were able to close on 42 loans for the PPP loans for $3.6 million. And significantly, the difference is in an average year, we do 15 loans totaling $2 million. And so we've done that in 13 days. And these slides are a little bit out of date because we've already started round 2 and been able to get several of those through also. And then in addition, just kind of things that we feel are the right thing to do that we have offered prior to this happening is we have affordable housing loan programs. We're partnered with Habitat for Humanity. We've been able to offer some discounted fees and things for their clients to be able to get into the Habitat homes. And then our affordable home loan program that's available in our primary lending areas of Thurston and Mason County. People earning 80% or less of the median income, we have that program and have been able to help several people get into a home. And I think next slide. Okay. I believe we were one of the first ones to make the contribution to the United Way Community Foundation, the COVID response fund of $10,000 contribution to that. We've also made a $5,000 contribution to the Habitat for Humanity COVID emergency fund. And then something that we have been doing for quite some time now with tied to our debit cards. We do make a contribution to a different nonprofit organization every month for the last couple of years, I believe. And in April, we'll be making our donation to BHR. There's a lot of people out there that need a lot of help right now. And so really, I think one of the things that I just want to make really clear is that we're here to help. We have a lot of ways that we can help people. And my advice is if anybody out there is struggling making their mortgage payment, whether you're our customer or another bank's customer, the best thing that you can do is reach out to them ask for assistance and find out what they can do to help. And this is my contact information. If anybody has any follow-up questions or want to ask a personal question, I'm here to help you.
Kirsten, you're on the air. Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. So I'm up.
Great.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I am Kirsten York. I am the Director of Family Services for Community Action Council, Lewis, Mason, and Thurston counties. We are a private nonprofit that serves those 3 counties with a variety of programs to include energy assistance, weatherization, housing and affordable housing, homeless services, WIC, and also our Child Advocacy Center. So I wanted to provide a little bit of an overview of some of the rental assistance programs we had up through the pandemic starting this year in 2020. We have a small pot of funding that we use for our housing stabilization program that provides homeless prevention assistance for clients who are at or below 30% of the area median income, who are at imminent risk of losing their primary nighttime residence. It's a small pot of funding through Thurston County Public Health of $30,000. However, was definitely needed in the community up to this point, and we still have a little bit of funding remaining. We have been able to serve 12 households and have some, like I said, funding remaining through the end of August, and hope to receive an additional contract year coming up here in September. So that program is still running. We're still accepting clients. As I'm sure everyone knows, it's a high demand program. And because of the pandemic and the moratorium on evictions, I'm able to adjust the eviction notice requirement. And so we just have landlords express the tenant is unable to pay their rent, and that can also qualify them for that program. And then the next program, in partnership with United Way of Thurston County and Community Foundation of South Puget Sound, as Jennifer said, OliFed was one of the first donors to this emergency fund pot of 10 grand. So thank you so much. We have been able to serve clients in the community who are at 200% of federal poverty or 60% of area median income, who have experienced a loss in income because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're providing folks with a one-time assistance payment for each household. We right now have $100,000 in this fund in Thurston County, and have been in touch with United Way about potential additional allocations for this program. We were able to start in the very first week of April 2020 and have 323 households pre-qualified on this wait list. We've vouchered and paid 33 households that are equal to about 106 individuals who have received this assistance. And most of those, as you can see, 30 of those 33 households have gone to rental assistance and mortgage assistance, because this is the biggest barrier to loss of income because of the pandemic, is of being able to pay their rent. So we've been able to expend $36,000+ and provided a household average for everyone to see. And we've been tracking the industries in which clients are asking for assistance and what kind of job loss they're experiencing. And that really runs the gamut of the types of industries in our community: food services, retail, entertainment, healthcare, private business or self-employed, government and public service, construction, and some other categories. So we have lots of information there for folks to see, and then our contact information is the last slide. So if people have questions or have people to refer to this program, they're welcome to give us a call or check out our website.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. I also wanted to have Craig share a bit about what the Housing Authority of Thurston County has been doing related to COVID-19 response.
Thank you, Carrie. So the Housing Authority, to give a little context to what we do, because I'm not sure everybody knows what the Housing Authority does, we provide rental assistance, that's rental subsidies, sometimes called housing choice vouchers. An older name is Section 8. We serve about 2,000 households in Thurston County with rental assistance. We also provide supportive services to our clients to help people find pathways toward greater financial stability and, in many cases, self-sufficiency where they no longer need our assistance. We are also a significant housing provider. The authority owns and rents in mixed income communities, but focusing on low, moderate income households, 537 housing units here in Thurston County. We also directly subsidize 9 nonprofits in our community, and they focus on special needs clientele. The individuals receive supportive services from those 9 nonprofits, and that program adds another 475 units of housing to our community. The COVID-19 response is, we thought about this in February and we realized what was coming, and we sat down and we focused on what we could do with the minimal amount of people and what really were our most important things. We sat down when we could all get together and said, what are really the 2 or 3 most important things that we do in the immediate future? And we decided that that is making sure that we're able to get those subsidies out so that people don't have the stress of falling behind on rent. The landlords, the property managers, owners have income to pay their bills. And then of course we need to be able to pay our own bills. So we settled on a couple things: rental assistance and managing to pay our bills. We described the situation maintain business as usual. We just won't be in our usual places. And shortly before the governor issued the proclamation, we were working remotely. And that did surprise some folks who thought we weren't available, but no, we are available. And I think that's been communicated now. For our residents, we realized people would lose jobs, lose hours, wouldn't have the same level of income. And our advice, as always, is please just communicate with our site managers and we will work with folks. I like the message that our deputy director sent to our property managers, and what he emphasized in that message is COVID-19 is no one's fault, and what we need to do is reduce stress in people's lives and exercise the greatest possible degree of compassion. So residents of Housing Authority properties, if you find yourself in a situation where you don't have income or you've seriously lost income, please talk to the site manager. And well, everybody's situation is different, and we'll work with people on an individual basis. Voucher holders, the 2,000 households we work with, the issue there is simply to communicate with your housing worker. Don't wait. We had some instances where people lost income and they thought, well, I'm going to get it back here in a week or 2, so let's just let this sit for a while. We really want you to communicate with us soon. And if your income comes back quickly, we'll just work through the numbers again, but we want you to get the maximum benefit as soon as possible. And so you can call us, you can email your worker, you can use traditional mail, and when there's paperwork be delivered right by our front door. For the last decade, we've had a large secure metal box, and people can drop paperwork and mail in that box for us. We do go through a 24-hour quarantine of physical mail just in case a virus survives on that paper, but within 24 hours then we work on it, and we strive to have a 1-week turnaround on all of those requests. Sometimes we're doing better than that, but we strive for one week to increase the subsidies. Several people have asked us, do you have the capacity to increase subsidy? And the answer is yes. I've heard some rumors that organizations are planning on us cutting back. We are not. We anticipate having capacity. Thus far, we've processed 87 requests for additional subsidy. That is going to cost about $30,000 additional a month. At this point, we budgeted for it. We have capacity, and we're quite confident the ultimate source of the funding, HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, will backstop us on that. The CARES Act does have additional money for rental assistance program. We have also gone to an emergency streamlining of processes. For example, if people have lost a job, in normal times, there's a verification process. Urgency is here in this emergency. Write us a letter, sign it. We're going to take your word for it. We're doing that with people who are moving and get into new units. We do have some differences in how we have to inspect units before move-in, but we're doing a lot of self-verification, a lot of trust, and we'll dot some I's and cross some T's when it's safer for people to move around. But the important thing to remember is, while we're not in the office, we are accessible. We check the emails constantly. We check the telephone constantly, and we really want to hear from people if they're having an issue so we can assist. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Craig. Jay, I'm going to turn it back over to you now for questions for us.
Okay, thank you. Again, thanks Carrie, Jennifer, Kirsten, and Craig for the presentation. It's now time for questions and answers. Just as a reminder, at the bottom of your screen, there's a tab that says Q&A. If you click on that, you can start to type in a question. I've got 3 of them queued up, but I'm sure there are more out there. So please go ahead and start typing your questions in now. And then Carrie, I might ask you also to exit out of the presentation so that all of the council members and panelists can come up on the screen again. I think that will help everybody. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. So the first question is, how does invoking forbearance impact an owner's ability to place their home on the market?
So it doesn't really, a person can still sell their home if they're under a forbearance agreement. Basically, forbearance is just, you have an agreement for a period of time to put your payments on pause. And so obviously you wouldn't have been reducing the balance of the mortgage, but when you sell the home, the proceeds from the sale go to pay off the mortgage loan.
Okay, thank you. The next question is around cash flow. So there's some current concerns. So this person is a property owner who has renters, concerned with cash flow right now, with renters not able to pay their rent, but their mortgage is still due. I think you covered this a little bit in all of your presentations about assistance that might be available. So they're just inquiring about, besides bank assistance, are there other assistance available for homeowners right now who are concerned about their ability to pay their mortgage?
I would say to some extent it depends on the household and the homeowner. Kirsten talked about some of the programs that that her agency has available. Those are targeted to specific incomes and or households and income levels. So it depends really specifically on the household, their income or lack of income. And other things like that may help them qualify or prevent them from qualifying for specific services or programs.
Yeah, I would say that this is the time for a conversation with the tenant to say, have you, tenant, been able to look into any services that could be offered for your rental, your rent portion? So whether it's the COVID-19 emergency fund or some other pots of funding through foundations or private organizations that could give a little bit to help supplement their rent due and payment plans for the future. So.
Okay, our next question I think is for you, Kirsten. If you've already received funding through the CAC for this round for the COVID-19 fund, can you reapply?
That's a great question. You can reapply. We are offering assistance to clients who haven't received it before first. So the best thing to do is, we have a pre-screened wait list, and I would get back on the wait list. We also will, case manage every client calling in for other services that might be able to ease the burden for energy assistance or other programs available to them, so that they, you could get support in other portions of your budget, not just for rent. So the answer is yes, you can, and not a guarantee that we could get to everyone since we've had such a large demand on the program and a limited amount of funding.
So related to that, Kirsten, on one of your slides, you showed that you had $100,000 and you've obligated about $30-some thousand of that. So they're just asking, are there any issues with getting the funds allocated faster, or any concerns you have, or is there more folks should be doing to get in line to get those funds allocated faster?
Yeah, we're allocating payments as quickly as possible with the staff and case management team that we have here. Really, it's just offering the best possible information when you call and speak to a client service specialist over the phone, and then being prepared for knowing what your income is great, and having documentation that's necessary to be able to be qualified makes it go a little bit quicker, but we're moving as quickly as possible.
All right. Thank you, Kirsten. So this question is around options for rental assistance, and I think you've covered some of this, but the person asking the question was not selected through the Housing Authority lottery, and they're asking what other help is there for me in terms of rental assistance.
Well, unfortunately, that's a hard question because of limited dollars. Certainly in Congress and with the advocacy, there are people pushing to expand these programs. The sad fact of life is the rental assistance program, the big one, housing choice vouchers, about 25% of the people in America who are income eligible receive it. So there's a huge gap between the need and the funding. And maybe out of this crisis, we will look at ways to expand those programs, and that program in particular. That doesn't help somebody this afternoon, however. We have some options. As I say, we fund some other properties. On our website, we list under a tab other resources, and we list our own properties. And while many of those have waiting lists, they are at least less expensive than other properties on the market. And so they give people options when they're looking for housing. But somebody who is renting right now, they're in a good location. It gets down to, I think, what all three of us and Carrie too have said, negotiating a little bit with the landlord. I think landlords are going to be rational. It's right now you can't evict, it's illegal. But even if you could, or when the moratorium ends and it's allowed, that's an expensive process. And then there's vacancy when nobody's paying rent, and there's turnover costs of refurbishing a place for the next person. So I think landlords are going to be highly motivated for the most part to work with people who find themselves with the lack of ability to pay their rent or their full rent at the moment. I wish I had more to say on that, but I think that's where we are right now.
I wanted to offer too that Community Action Council does have quite a few properties in the community that are affordable housing units based upon certain pots of funding that you can get on a wait list for, with either a sliding scale or up to a certain percentage of your income for rent, depending on the property. Those are all listed on our website, and all of the contact information is under affordable housing. So that would be another option, is to find other locations that are affordable housing opportunities and, you know, put on a wait list. And then in addition, our energy assistance program is still providing services and energy assistance grants. So making sure those resources are looked into to help, you know, ease up some of the other funds in a budget for a household is a great way to do that as well.
Okay, thank you. So I think this was discussed earlier. You know, even though there's a stay on evictions and for folks that aren't able to pay their rent right now, I think there are a lot of folks right now that are worried about when the moratorium is over and they're going to owe these big lump sums of back rent, that what protections or opportunities might be in place for folks who are worried about that.
Perhaps more of a question than at least I feel comfortable answering what the legal protection is. Again, I hope that people will be talking together, the property owners, property managers, and the tenants, to work out solutions. It may not be realistic for many people to pay a large lump sum, but could that be spread out over a period of time? What could be worked out so that the eviction is avoided, to avoid the human trauma of that? Is important. And for landlords, I think there is some economic incentive to work with those processes as well. The compassion that I mentioned earlier is appropriate and economically rational.
I can add that in the governor's moratorium on evictions, in the most recent proclamation that he made around that, there is language in there about reasonable payment plans for
Correct.
that accumulation of debt. Reasonable at this point is probably going to be decided by courts, which is hopefully we can get some more clarity from the state on what they mean by reasonable. But I think it is incredibly important to recognize that the accumulation of debt to remain in housing during a stay-at-home or mandate is it's really unfortunate. And I'm hoping that we're getting more clarity from the state on what reasonable looks like. And I'm also hoping that any landlords that are able to do any kind of rent forgiveness for people in that situation will consider it.
Thank you for that clarification, Councilmember Madrone. Appreciate that. So there's a question about will the city be exploring help for tenants or one-time recurring rental aid? And maybe I'll take an initial shot at an answer to that. And then Carrie, maybe you can jump in as well, or council members. But the city did make a $50,000 contribution to the United Way Community Foundation Fund, which is funding the Community Action Council's work and the funds that they're delivering. And the city is also going to make an additional $50,000 payment to that fund because the need is great. So there should be more funds flowing through. So that's the initial work that the city has done in terms of providing some aid out there for rental aid. And I don't know if others want to jump in there.
I'd just add that's the quickest way, for us to be able to get aid out to the community is through organizations that are already doing that work and have relationships and staff to be able to do that.
I'd encourage people to tune into the finance meeting that's happening at 5 o'clock today to see the state of the city's finances, to see that we're going to be making some incredibly tough decisions around the money that we do have available.
Thank you for that. And just as a reminder, that meeting is at 5:30 this evening, 5:30.
Thanks, Jay.
You betcha. Okay. And Carrie, related to that, so this person's asking about the CDBG COVID funds at the city, the additional CDBG COVID funds the city was granted, the $240,000. Is there any consideration for any of that going to homeless prevention or rental assistance?
So the city got around $237,000 additional community development block grant funds, CDBG, through the federal government to support emergency COVID relief efforts. And the areas where council is looking at directing those funds right now, and we're starting the public hearing process currently. So there's three big topic areas where we're focusing funds: emergency food assistance through organizations like the Food Bank, economic development support for small businesses, small employers. Much of that is going to probably flow through organizations that are doing that sort of thing in the community already, helping small businesses stay afloat and keep their employees employed, or helping them to cover rent and other expenses that we've already talked about today. And then the third piece is emergency housing support. There have been, one of the big challenges in our housing system has been making sure that we can keep shelters operational. We've been struggling to try and keep as many folks sheltered as possible. So an example of, one of the challenges that COVID-19 has presented for the shelter community is any given shelter has had to reduce the number of beds in the shelter so that they can try and reduce the likelihood of infection within a shelter of COVID-19. So that's meant that all the shelters are operating with the same costs, but they're serving fewer people. So that's another place where we're likely to help to invest to try and support as many folks as possible in shelter in partnership with the county.
Thank you, Carrie. And I might also add, Oh, sorry, I couldn't see who that was. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt to somebody. So I just want to add to Carrie's comments that the recommendations around council's CDBG dollars related to COVID relief just went to the General Government Committee last week, and it will be coming in front of council next week on May 5th. There'll be a public hearing around options for those, and council will have their initial discussions on ways to spend that COVID CDBG dollars. So I want to make sure folks are aware of those dates, that there's more conversation to happen. The next question I have is, what about state level Section 8 programs? Anybody have any updates on those?
No.
I'll share broadly that the state released at the end of their regular session, they released emergency funds to all counties. Thurston County got just under $1 million for a number of different homeless and housing assistance programs specifically related to COVID-19 relief. So around $1 million has been dispersed to the county for shelter assistance, emergency rent assistance through the emergency housing system. And Kirsten talked a bit about some of the programs. And Kirsten, I don't know if you want to add a bit more about some of that.
No, I think all the stuff that we covered, or all the opportunities we have so far, and then speaking about specifically the additional federal funds coming through Commerce for energy assistance. And
I will add, Jay, that we heard just 2 days ago from the governor's office that more federal assistance is on the way to local governments, but we have not heard a lot of detail yet about what that's going to be targeted towards.
There's also going to be a special session of the legislature, probably in June after they get their financial forecasting. So there will be more action taken by the state this summer, but we don't know what that looks like yet.
We got time for a couple more questions. I've got a couple more left. This first one here is around concerns that their landlord is expecting rent to be paid by the end of this month. And they're concerned about not having dollars as they're still waiting on their stimulus and other benefits. So I'd assume, Kirsten, if they haven't already, reaching out to Community Action Council for some rental relief might be a great option there.
yes, for sure. And again, landlords are not going to be able to evict tenants for non-payment at this point. And so really just having a discussion about whether any portion of that rent can be paid up front, or any other, assistance can be sought after by the tenant to see what they can provide, is the best place to start with that type of situation. So give us a call for sure.
I'm going to do my best with this question to get this one up here. So this is around, I think, if landlords are giving any assistance or funding for assistance, are there any conditions attached to that would allow specific relief for renters? So for example, if the banks or someone else are giving mortgage holders relief, do they put any conditions on that about their renters? And I don't believe you do, but I'll serve it up that way and see if you have anything to add. Maybe Jennifer.
No, we wouldn't specifically. I mean, one would hope that people would be doing the right thing, and if they're receiving assistance, but we're not. What we're doing is not gifting people money, so they at some point in time still have to make those mortgage payments based on the repayment terms that they've worked out with us and choose. So they would probably still be counting on the renter to pay rent unless they were in a financial position to forgive some of the rent, but we're not specifically conditioning that they do that.
Jay, I'd add that Washington State Department of Commerce manages a program called the Landlord Mitigation Fund. And that program has been expanded in the last year to include other assistance beyond damages. So that if you are a landlord and you're having a hard time covering costs from a tenant, either because of non-payment of rent or because of damages, that's an important program to look into. There's more information on the Washington State Department of Commerce's website about that.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are right about the end of our virtual town hall. We got majority of the questions that were up. I think I was able to get them answered. So I'm going to turn it back to Chair Gilman for closing comments and wrap up.
All right, so we've each got a minute. For starters, Councilmember Madrone and Mayor Pro Tem Bateman, would you like, one of you like to take the first minute and respond?
I just have a quick question. So this is for Kirsten. For the members of our community that are undocumented, can you just explain the resources that are available to folks in that category? Because we know that they were exempted from the benefits from the CARE Act.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So the COVID-19 Emergency Fund does not require documented Social Security information for those funds. So we're only asking that people are residents of our community, that the county in which they're being served. So we also have this fund in Lewis and Mason counties. And anyone who experiences a loss of income because of the pandemic and fits within the income guidelines is eligible. We have had discussions with United Way that there is an association in the state working with some funding for specifically undocumented community members. And so that would be more information we could get back to you. But right now, anyone eligible, regardless of documentation status, is able to get assistance.
And then just one quick follow-up question, if I may. I'm surprised that out of the $100,000 that you've only gone through, just say 30,000 of it. What is that process? How are you letting people know that those resources are available, turnaround time, and how are people finding out that they can access this information and these resources?
Sure. So we've, in partnership with United Way of Thurston County and the Community Foundation, done a lot of outreach and public engagement over social media and regular media that this program is available. Like I said, we have a substantial pre-qualified list of people who are asking for the program, and we just got notice in the beginning of April that we had a starter pot of 50 grand, and people are getting information back to us as quickly as possible. So that 30,000 is actual money that we spent and paid out to landlords or mortgages or whatever program assistance household needs. But we have at least 25 pending files at this point, and we're still getting phone calls and processing documentation. So we created a program that was as low barrier as we could to provide assistance directly to landlords and people who need whomever we're paying on behalf of that household. And it just, you know, that's been 3 weeks of that. So it's been a case management team here working diligently to do their regular case management positions as well as this additional funding pot. And so they're working as quickly as they can and getting through people as quickly as possible.
Good. Jessica, would you also like to take a minute for some closing comment?
I appreciate everyone being on the call today. It was interesting to hear information from a lender. You know, we've had conversations about the availability of being able to extend out a loan. I'm also really concerned about the debt accumulation, like Councilmember Madrone mentioned, and steps that the state can take if we're mandating that people stay home and they're not able to pay their rent. Mm-hmm. We also don't want those homeowners to lose their homes and then those individuals have to be evicted and unhoused anyway. I know that a lot of this is continuing to be planned and it's fast moving. And I think we have a role as a city council, and we've continued to be an advocate for these changes, like the moratorium on evictions, and we'll continue to do that and track what needs that our community has. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank Carrie and Jennifer, Kirsten and Craig for joining us today and sharing this wealth of information that you have. I also want to recognize that right now there's a lot of opportunity for tension to build between landlords and tenants. There's also a lot of opportunity for relationship building to take place. So if you're a landlord, I do encourage you to please reach out to your tenants and see if they've been impacted by COVID-19. And if they have been, talk with them to find out how you can keep them in their home. And recognizing that the threat of losing a home is a really crippling experience. Tenants, please tell your landlord as soon as you can if you're not going to be able to pay your rent, because that will give them the opportunity to reach out to their mortgage holder if they have one and see if they can get the forbearance that's available. And if you're a landlord and you're able to get that forbearance where you get that payment put at the end of your mortgage, consider passing some rent relief onto your tenants instead of the accumulation of debt. We're going to be in this for a while. These problems are going to be around. So again, I just really want to stress the need to use this opportunity to build relationships.
Thank you. So I appreciate what both of you said about the council actions we're taking and the important value of communication. Thank goodness for these assistance opportunities that we have here in our community, the donations to the COVID-19 Mitigation Fund and the caring organizations who are distributing these funds. And I expect and want the city to continue to advocate for more resources to come in to Olympia and to Thurston County to continue to offer this sort of aid. I'm also acutely aware through this crisis that half of Americans are one paycheck away from trouble. We've been saying that for years, and it's really coming home to roost right now. It's just more clear now than ever that our economic inequality is putting too many good people into vulnerable situations. So I hope that we'll continue to work to strengthen these kinds of emergency assistance programs, but also look beyond the crisis assistance to addressing the root problems like less expensive housing, higher wages, and everybody pays their fair share of taxes. So thank you so much for the evening tonight. We want to thank our panelists and moderator, Jennifer, Kirsten, Craig, Carrie, thank you for your work and for sharing tonight. Jay, thank you once again for moderating. And thank you all out there for listening and for the tremendous interest and participation in these town hall forums. Stay tuned for more information about a series, not right this moment, but stay tuned to your social media over the days to come, about a series of community conversations about what a sustainable, just, and resilient community looks like post-COVID-19. The city's done a lot of work around community conversations before, but your city council feels it's important to look again at community priorities through a new recovery-focused lens. Facing a crisis can really remind us of the things that we value the most. We know that staying home is stressful, difficult, and frustrating. Thank you for sticking with it. You've demonstrated that we're all in this together, and this city council is very proud of Olympia's cooperation with public health advice to combat this epidemic. So stay home, stay safe, wash your hands and mask up, and we'll see you on the ICU2 TV next Tuesday night. Thank you.